Okay, looks like we are live. Hey everybody, this is Andrew Schultz, Principal Broker with Own Buffalo. Welcome to episode number 4 of Ask a Property Manager. This is the Atlanta edition. I am down here in Atlanta. I was at a conference yesterday, a little bit of a one-day seminar, like a very, very good, very intensive seminar. Today's topic was meant to be dealing with vacancies in your rentals during the winter months, but we're going to change that up. I want to talk a little bit about this conference, some industry trends that I've noticed, and some things that are kind of just happening in the news, both locally and nationally. So no fancy splashes today. I don't have any of my studio stuff. It's just me on my laptop. I don't even have a good view to show you guys. I'm literally looking out the hotel room window at a 6-lane highway. So it's really not all that exciting. But I do want to get into this a little bit. So I'm going to pop over. I've got some notes in case you see me looking down. I'm looking at my screen because I've got some notes here. One thing I did want to mention before we get started, if you guys head over to ownbuffalo.com, you can schedule your 30-minute consultation with me. That is a free consultation. I'm not trying to pitch you. I'm not trying to sell you. It's literally, if you have a question, you don't feel comfortable posting about it on Facebook, on our page, or something like that, you can go get that 30-minute consultation. You don't have to be in the Buffalo market. I'll try to answer the question no matter where you live. At the very least, I can give you some general ideas, and then you can research further from there. So hopefully we can at least get people pointed in the right direction. So that's my plug for Own Buffalo for the week. Let's see here. So the conference that I'm in Atlanta for, it was a one-day seminar. It was called the BizDev Mastermind Seminar. It was put on by Brad Larson and the team at, I believe the BizDev team at Rentworks was part of it, as well as there's a separate entity that does just BizDev that Brad is involved in. So they put on this one-day intensive seminar, and the whole premise behind the seminar was that it's meant to be focused on improving the property management sales process, helping you kind of analyze where you're at in your business, as far as how your sales process is set up, how you can refine it to improve it, not just to increase your sales, but also to increase the value that you're offering to your client, your property owner, as well as your tenant. So there was really in depth on a lot of different topics. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about in-depth pieces of the seminar itself, because obviously that's a product that Brad and his team sell. So I don't want to steal somebody else's thunder and just hand out information for free. But I do want to talk about a few different takeaways that I was able to pull from that conference, other than the direct content. We're going to share some statistics with you in a little while that I think you'll find interesting. And yeah, it was very good. It was a one-day intensive. It was worth every penny. It wasn't necessarily the cheapest conference that I've been to by the time you factored in like the flight and the hotel and everything. It certainly was not as cheap as if I had stayed and went to something in Buffalo, but they don't have this kind of content in Buffalo, if we're being honest. Like you almost have to travel in this industry to really get the deep knowledge from the people who have lived it. Like everybody who was on that stage yesterday was involved in property management in some way, shape, or form. Brad owns the largest, or I don't know if it's the largest, but one of the largest property management companies in San Antonio, Texas. Scott Brady is crushing it out there in California. There were a ton of other speakers. Everybody in there in the conference was property management related. So it was very nice to have a nice industry focused event that way. So I do want to spend a couple minutes talking about the importance of seminars and continuing education. There's just so much valuable knowledge that you gain at these events, but you have to commit to yourself and you have to commit to your business in order to make it happen. As you guys know, we're in the process right now of gearing everything up at Own Buffalo. We're up and running. We're transitioning our client base from the previous brokers we were at over to Own Buffalo. Literally, that's like the process that we're in right now. So that's kind of where we're at in our early business cycle here. The point I'm driving at is it's incredibly busy in our office. It's myself and my office manager, and we've both been working nonstop to make this transition happen and to make the whole process as smooth as possible. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it to this seminar. I literally pulled the trigger on Sunday night. I booked the conference on Sunday, booked a flight, booked the hotel. I flew out Monday. To give you an idea, Monday I spent my morning doing my tax prep, all of my 1099s for owners and vendors and everything else, which is intensive work in my opinion, because I don't have the accounting brain that a lot of people do. So I had to spend Monday morning working on that. Monday afternoon, I got on a plane out of Buffalo, flew Buffalo to Baltimore, and then Baltimore to Chicago. Sorry, not Baltimore, Baltimore to Atlanta. You know, it wasn't optimal. It wasn't an optimal flight. I love direct flights, and this was the cheapest and best option. Booked a hotel room. It wasn't the hotel that the conference was in. So I had, you know, a quick trip. I'm not far. I'm like 5 minutes from the hotel the conference was in, but there was a lack of convenience there. There just weren't any rooms available at the hotel that the conference was at. I'd missed that window. I'd missed that block of rooms because I registered so late, literally 2 days before the event. But you know what? That's fine, because I committed to myself. I committed to my business to come out here and get the information that I wanted out of this seminar. And I'm glad I did, because by the end of the first session, I'd already had received every ounce of value and then some that I more than took care of the cost of the conference in the first session. Just an amazing conference beginning to end. One thing I did want to mention, Brad Larson is the guy who ran the conference. Like, his company was the one that set the conference up. And I've known Brad for a couple years. He's an excellent, excellent example of what the property management industry should be. He has 9 different designations, 9 between NARPM and NAR designations. It's a dedicated, lifelong dedication to learning that Brad has. And he shares it with anybody that he comes in contact with. It's just amazing to see the amount that these people are able to give back in such a short window when they're speaking in these conferences. The best part of these seminars typically isn't even the educational content. It tends to be the networking and the interaction that you get, talking to other attendees, you know, bouncing ideas off of them, finding out what their best practices are. How does it differ from your best practice? Wow, do I need to make a change in the way that I'm doing things? Or, you know, is this lowering the barrier to entry to make it easier for an owner to work with us, or to make it easier for a tenant to rent with us? There was a lot of discussions about that. So, you know, just keep in mind that, yeah, the networking and stuff like that is optional at these events, but you miss out on quite a bit of it, you know, quite a bit of the event experience by not networking. I consider myself fairly introverted, and, you know, I kind of have to force myself to go to networking events. But again, it's committing to going to those events. That's where you get the real in-depth knowledge, I would say. All that being said, we're getting a little bit overly motivational, and that's not the purpose of my podcast or my show here, I guess I would say. Let's move on to something a little bit more of substance. I'll start with my biggest takeaways from outside the classroom. So this would be stuff that I picked up on from just having conversations with vendors, having conversations with other attendees, having conversations with the speakers, you know, during lunch, during dinner, at the networking events, things like that. Some of the biggest takeaways that I got from outside the classroom, the laws are changing in a massive way in just about every state. Every single person that I talked to made mention of the fact that laws were changing in their state, and not necessarily for the better. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but not always for the better. And it's one of those things that if you're not staying on top of it, it's very easy to fall behind, and all of a sudden legislation gets passed that you had no idea about, and now you have to deal with the consequences of that legislation. And it's happening everywhere. It's happening in, you know, it's happening in New York. We had new landlord laws that were passed in June and July last year, with some more going into effect in October of 2019. There's also some new landlord legislation coming down the pipeline now that we just found out about. It's crazy how this stuff is just, nobody seems to know about it until it's on the floor being voted on. So it's crazy. A couple other things that were mentioned: Oakland, California, and again, this is talking more about the laws. Oakland, California, I pulled this off of a local Facebook page this morning. Oakland, California has voted to ban criminal background checks altogether. So as part of your tenant screening process, you'll no longer be able to look at someone's criminal background at all as a screening factor, which I think is misguided legislation. This passed in Oakland. I believe this is a city ordinance. I should have read the article a little bit more closely, but I believe this is just a city ordinance. It did pass 8-0. My understanding is that they do have to have a second vote on this, and then it basically will become law out there in Oakland. So when you start to see things like this popping up in other areas, you kind of have to take a step back and say, okay, how long before this becomes an issue for me? How long before this becomes an issue in my market? So something else that was a big takeaway from outside the classroom: safety is no longer in our favor as real estate agents, real estate brokers, and property managers. I won't go into too much detail here, but there was some discussion about a landlord who was recently pushed down a flight of stairs when he went to collect rent money from his tenant. And I don't know both sides of the story, so I'm not going to say who's in the right, who's in the wrong. I watched the video. It sounds to me like there might have been some previous altercations or something like that. But someone got pushed down a flight of stairs for trying to collect rent, keep their business alive, and that person is now dead. And that could literally happen to anybody. Safety is no longer in our favor as real estate agents, real estate brokers, property managers. As a matter of fact, there was a real estate agent, and I don't remember where this was. I quick glanced at the article maybe a week or so when I saw it, a week or so ago. There was an agent that was killed just showing a home. She went out to show a home to somebody. It was a husband and wife that they were showing the home to, and once they got her inside the home, they murdered her in cold blood. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. It's protecting yourself as an agent is critical. As an agent, as a broker, as a property manager, really just in general, protect yourself. But there's a reason that we now have things like a closed door office policy. So like if a tenant wants to come in, they need to schedule a meeting with us so that they can come in. Otherwise, if they show up at the office, they're going to find the door is locked. And that's for our safety. We have a drop box outside the door for people to leave paperwork and things like that. We no longer do cash rent collection. If you bring cash to our office, we're going to send you across the street to the pharmacy and tell you to go get a money order, because we won't allow cash rent collection in our office. And we don't do in-person rent collection. We don't go out to properties to collect rent anymore. It's the tenant's responsibility to make sure that that rent gets to us. And all three of those policies are in place because of safety concerns. Once you start carrying a large sum of cash, all it takes is one person or two people to realize that you have cash on you at any given time. Now you're a target. So don't make yourself a target. Make the tenants bring the rent to you, make them mail it, have multiple ways for tenants to make rent payments to you, so that you don't have to run out there and try to collect it in cash. Turning to something maybe a little bit less, I want to say this, a little bit less sketch, a little bit less scary. Talk about things that we learned inside the classroom. These are my three biggest takeaways from inside the classroom. And again, this is without giving away a lot of the content of the seminar itself, because I know that Brad is running another one of these things down the road, and I don't want to step on any of the presenters' toes either. They built that content. They did an excellent job. I don't want to take away from them, essentially. So my biggest takeaway from the classroom: implement now, perfect later. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. And this is something that I'm super guilty of. I will sit and wait until I think that I have perfected something before I put it in place. And that's the worst way to operate. It slows things down. It makes things less organized instead of more organized in a lot of instances. It creates bottlenecks. It's bad. It's the worst thing you can do in your business. Implement now, perfect later. Any process that you build needs to be structured, needs to be repeatable, and it needs to be effective. If you can get it to the point where it's structured and repeatable, implement it, then work on tinkering with it, making it more effective, tweaking it over time, doing what you need to make it the most effective process. Structure it, make it repeatable, implement it, then fix it. If you've got a process that works, get it in place. You can always tweak the process. One other takeaway that I pulled out of this conference was digest information quickly. So this morning I sat down with my notes. They gave us a nice little USB key that had all the slideshows and everything on it, plus the notes that I had taken yesterday. I sat down this morning before I got on here and worked on completing my notes and digesting the information and getting as much as I could immediately out of the content so that I can begin that process of implementation. It's, if you wait a week, if you wait 2 weeks, you're going to start forgetting bits and pieces. You're going to lose track of the information that you had all in one spot. You're going to forget things that were said during the conference that maybe didn't make it into your notes that you would remember. Something would jog your memory early, but as time goes on, you lose those little pieces of information. So the early bird gets the worm. Here's a couple of really interesting statistics that you can use in any sales-based career. All of this applies to pretty much any sales-based career. You are 391% more likely to convert a lead if you call them within 1 minute of them submitting the lead. Generally, what that means is, say you get a lead from your website, and you call them back right away as soon as the email hits your inbox. They might even still be on your website. It gives you the opportunity to really talk to that person while they're fresh, while they're thinking about property management or whatever it is that you're selling. It's your best moment is to strike while the iron is hot. Be there within, that first minute. That's not an easy thing to do. Let's be honest. That's a very challenging thing to do. You could be on the phone with somebody else. You could be in a meeting. You could be doing any of a number of things that would prevent you from calling that lead the second that they drop their contact info. If you can get back to that lead within 60 minutes, you're 36% more likely to convert that lead. It's just, the faster you can get to the lead, the quicker the process begins, and the faster you can sign that person onto your service or sell them your product or whatever the case may be. So, moving quickly is ultra important when it comes to pinning down that lead. Here's a statistic that is geared more towards real estate agents. 65% of people will work with whatever agent they speak to first. So if you have someone that sends you, they're on Zillow, for instance, and you wind up with a round robin lead off of Zillow, chances are you're going to wind up, 2 or 3 other agents are going to get the same lead. If you're not the first one to talk to that person, that lead is probably already gone. 65% of the time, they're going to work with the first person that they spoke to. So that definitely speaks volumes on the early bird gets the worm. Talk to these people the second that you get the lead information. A couple of other stats that are interesting. Open rates are 300% higher for text messages versus email. No one is answering phone calls. Like, that shouldn't shock you. No one is answering phone calls. When was the last time you looked at your cell phone when it rang and you didn't know the number and you thought, oh, I'm overjoyed to talk to whoever this person is that's not in my cell phone that I don't know, who I'm talking. No one is answering their phones. People read their email, they skim it, they delete it, it gets caught in spam filters. Text messaging. Text messaging is where you convert. 300% higher conversion rate. 300% higher open rate for people for text messaging versus email. That's huge. Text responses, 650% higher than email. So, you might send that email out and never get a response. If you were to send a text message, you are 650% more likely to get a response to a text message than you are to an email. 19% of people will click a link in a text versus 4% clicking a link in an email. So if you're trying to drive traffic to a website, get somebody to look at a YouTube video, get somebody to look at a 360 virtual tour, they are 19% of people will click that link if it's in a text message versus 4% of people will click that link in an email. That's interesting. And a lot of this stuff that I'm sharing with you right now is going to have a direct impact on how we alter our sales process in our office. But these stats are just something that are super, super interesting. And I wanted to share that stuff with you. My third big takeaway from inside the classroom, if you're not leveraging technology, you will be left behind. The days of people, using, and I literally still know a couple of landlords that are operating off of paper ledgers. What are you doing? Stop it. Stop. Get some property management software. It's time. Smart use of technology allows you to leverage your time and get so much more accomplished in any given day. And it starts with a quality CRM, customer relationship manager. A lot of these softwares now will allow you to build automated workflows. follow-up campaigns so that even when you're out, say you're out showing an apartment or something like that, when that new lead comes in, they're already being contacted and already working their way through that process without you having to lift a finger. It's going to become super critical, especially because it's so easy in our industry, for a tenant to go on, say, Facebook Marketplace and say, I'm interested to 75 apartments. Well, you still have to respond to that. And if you've got a bunch of tenants who are all doing the same thing, it can become overwhelming very quickly. So getting those automated processes in place to help you sift through the people who are actually serious in renting versus the people who are just kind of kicking tires, it's going to make your business that much more efficient. Digitized signature software. You don't have to meet people to sign contracts anymore. I would say a good chunk of our leasing is done with digital signature at this point. I'd say the bulk of our leasing is done digital signature at this point. Once the tenant's been out and looked at the property and they're satisfied and we've screened their application and everything comes out okay, we're in a situation at that point where we're looking at, we want the lease signed as quickly as possible. They can sign it in the evening, while they're at home. They don't have to come to the office and meet us, or we don't have to meet them at the property, what have you. Just makes life so much easier. So get yourself some digital signature software. Some of the property management softwares actually have that built in. Online rent payments is huge. If you're not accepting online rent payments, it's 2020. If you're not accepting online rent payments, it's time to get out of the industry. Like, I don't understand people who don't have some sort of a mechanism for people to pay online. I haven't paid a bill, with the exception of some bills that I absolutely have to write a check for, which is like maybe 2 bills I have to write a check for. I haven't written a check for any of my bills in a long time. They all get paid online. Actually, believe it or not, my rent check for the office is one of the few checks that I have to write manually. They don't have an online rent payment set up. Hopefully they get to that point someday. It is something that I mentioned I could help them set up if they're interested in, so we'll see if that goes anywhere. Online rent payments, guys, it's not hard. There's a multitude of different services out there. If you're in the property management industry, you have a bunch of units. There's a million different PM softwares out there: AppFolio, Buildium, Propertyware. I'm forgetting a bunch of them. Just Google search it, you'll find a bunch of them. Yardi Breeze is another one. Cozy is a good option if you have a few units, if you're a self-managing property owner, if maybe you have 1 or 2 units or something like that. Cozy seems to be the option for the small landlord that everybody seems to like. Smart locks, smart homes, etc. I think that you're going to see a lot more of this coming into play probably in the next 3 to 5 years. Smart home technology is starting to take hold, though it hasn't really entered the landlord-tenant space as much. I think one of the first things that you're going to find happen is cellular connected smart locks, such that you can go out and view an apartment and the property manager can unlock the door from their office just by sending a command to a digital doorknob that has a cellular connection. And you'll be able to go in and see the place without ever having to disturb, without ever having to meet with a leasing agent or whatever. That's something that I think will eventually be much more commonplace in our industry. It's just not quite there yet. So that pretty much wraps things up, guys. Those are my 3 big takeaways from inside the classroom without spoiling the seminar. We talked a little bit about the biggest takeaways from outside the classroom, making sure that you stay on top of the laws, making sure that you stay safe. We talked about the importance of these things, these seminars, continuing education. Guys, never, ever stop learning. I hate the term expert. I'm going to go out on my mini rant here. I hate the term expert because I feel like no one is ever truly an expert in anything. There's always more to learn. The day that you stop learning is the day that you should leave the industry, because at that point you have decided you're no longer going to stay competitive in the marketplace. You're no longer going to offer your clients the best service you can. You're no longer going to offer your tenants the best service you can. You're making that decision when you decide to stop following the industry trends, when you decide to stop educating yourself. You've made the decision that you're going to let your business start to slide, is kind of the way that I look at it. I don't like the term expert because there's always more to learn. I refuse to use the term expert. I refuse to label myself as an expert. I know a lot about property management, but I won't call myself an expert because there's always more to learn. So that being said, That's my little mini rant. Always get out there, always learn, and you don't have to travel for this. Find your local real estate investors meetings. Find your local landlords, on bigger pockets, and go out and have coffee with them. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to travel. I travel to a couple of these a year, but you don't have to do it. You can do it all locally. You can. There's literally a couple of landlord groups that have just a Google Hangout that they log into once a week. You get 10 guys, and that's their little mini mastermind that they have there. And that's how they stay current. They're constantly staying current by talking with people. So there's options out there. It doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to leave your bedroom if you don't want to. But definitely continue to educate yourself any opportunity you get. Let's see here. Next episode is going to be Wednesday, January 29th. That's next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern here on Facebook. Guys, if you miss these on Facebook, you can watch the replay on Facebook. You can also catch them on YouTube. Head over to ownbuffalo.com. You can click on the link to our YouTube page there. Please give us a subscription. Give us click that subscribe button, click that bell so that you find out when stuff's coming out. We're trying to hit that 100 subscriber mark over on YouTube so that we can get our custom URL there. So any subscription we get is a good subscription. We appreciate you guys helping us out that way. Also, while you're over at ownbuffalo.com, don't forget you can sign up for your free 30-minute consultation call with me. Take advantage of that. It's a great opportunity to pick my brain. I'm not going to try to pull the wool over your eyes. If I don't know the answer to your question, I'll just tell you, look, I'm not sure, but here are some resources that I would start researching from. Maybe I can at least point you in the right direction if I don't have the answer, if you're outside of our market or something like that. So the episode on January 29th, we're going to be talking about winter vacancies. That was actually what we were scheduled to talk about this week. We pushed it to next week just because I wanted to get this information out while it was still fresh here in my head. Guys, this is it. This is the end of the episode. This is Andrew Schultz. Thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Next time I will see you back in Buffalo. I got to go pack up and hop on a plane. Thanks for watching and have a great week.